Hello, and on this podcast, I'm going to take you through a free response question. If you look at your Module 8 handout from your in-class handout, it's both on Schoology and you received a hard copy. There are some free response questions. I'm going to take you through question number 10, which is an actual question from a recent AP exam. So I want to bring you through how to answer these questions. So please make sure you're reading the question. I'm not going to read everything to you, and then it'll make more sense as you follow the answers I provide in red and how to do them. But please take note, the one thing I did not do is I want you to do this. You also have to provide a definition or a description of the term. So for here, it would be correlational studies. I'm not going to do the definition part. I'm going to skip to how to do the description, the application part. Okay, the application part, applying their response to the specific question. One rule of thumb when you're doing application: don't speak in general terms. Always apply it to the context of the question. So for the first one, misunderstandings of correlational studies. So again, you would first define in one or two sentences or describe what a correlational study is. That's your general idea. And now you want to connect it to the question. The part I underlined is really, really important. Right here. What they're looking for is the idea that correlation does not equal causation. Okay? You can also argue that I applied a definition up there as well. Okay? But remember that correlation does not imply causation. That's what they want to see. Okay? The other thing is the second sentence, which I'll highlight in green, is my attempt to connect my response to the context of the question. Okay? So bear with me as we go through this. Here's part B. Make sure you read that. So again, I'm not going to define hypothesis. You define what a hypothesis is, and then here's your application. We'll highlight it in purple. Okay? The key here is that you want to make sure your hypothesis shows that we're doing something to the sugar. We're increasing it. You could also say decreased consumption of sugary snacks results in decreased hyperactivity. Okay, but you want to show that your hypothesis that something is going on with the two variables that you're using. Okay, so we want to make sure that something is actually happening in the hypothesis, right? Okay. Now, operationally defining. You would give a definition of an operational definition. Remember the M&M. Makes it measurable and meaningful. You can also say that meaningful is manageable. But remember, we always have to make our variables measurable so other people can replicate the experiment to some degree. So the key is here making sure that you understand hyperactivity is the dependent variable. And notice that I put that there. Hyperactivity, our dependent variable, will be measured. Now you can come up with whatever example you want that's applicable to the situation. So instead of using what they gave me, I put number of times students switch between tasks. You can put something like self-reports, a self-reporting process. Sorry, the pens don't work very well. Okay, so you can put something like that down. Now, random assignment. What they want to see, random assignment, is that, and you might be able to put that when you're using your definition, right? That random assignment means that all participants, once they're in the study, are going to have an equal chance of being in the control and experimental group. Remember, that's supposed to control for confounding variables. So that's the first part, right? That each person will have an equal chance. The second part, how do we do it? Well, usually we do it through some type of random number generator or computer, but we can also select names from a hat. Okay? Those are all ways. Now, this part about graphing, this was interesting. This was the first time in quite a while that AP ever asked anyone to graph something. So this is something we didn't go over in class. When you're graphing something, the independent variable always goes on the x-axis. The independent variable is always on the y-axis. So they're going to want to see the x and the y properly labeled with sugar. So sugar would go down here, and hyperactivity would go here as I wrote it. Now, they conclude that there was no changes, right? So a bar graph. So basically, the comparison would be the same between the two. So if you want, you can say that's your control group and that's your experimental group, right? We would see no difference in the levels of hyperactivity, right, between the two groups. So basically, that's what the graph would look like. Okay, so I hope this helped you understand how to write a free response question. Again, I didn't provide all the definitions, but you can see we're not having to do too much here.